Alaskan Bush People is a reality television series that follows the Brown family as they navigate life in the remote wilderness of Alaska. The show highlights how the family lives off the land, enduring harsh weather, unpredictable wildlife, and isolation. Each family member contributes significantly to keeping their homestead running, giving viewers a glimpse into the hardships and victories of living completely off the grid. But recently, Bear Brown has come forward with revelations that challenge everything fans thought they knew about the family. His startling confession has shocked many, as it unveils a hidden side of their life that was never captured on camera, one far removed from the rugged authenticity portrayed on the show. For more than 10 years, the Brown family appeared on TV as a tight-knit group surviving against all odds in the Alaskan wilderness. Audiences were captivated by their ability to construct homes from the ground up and make do with whatever nature provided. At the heart of the action was Bear, spirited, fearless, and always up for an adventure. Yet behind his energetic facade, Bear was grappling with inner struggles that few could see. To fans, Bear often came across as the most genuine. He was expressive, bold, and driven, climbing trees and chasing dreams with boundless passion. But from a young age, Bear was under immense pressure to behave a certain way, speak specific lines, and preserve the carefully curated image of the wolf pack. What played out on television didn't always align with the reality behind the scenes. Bear believed deeply in the values his family seemed to represent: resilience, togetherness, and survival. He wanted to be proud of their way of life. But as time passed, things started to shift. The difference between their real lives and what was filmed for television began to blur. Scenes were staged and repeated, conversations scripted, and even emotional moments were planned around the needs of production. At times, Bear wanted to be more candid and honest, but he was reminded that some truths didn't make for good television. This created a profound conflict within him. He had grown up believing their lifestyle was rooted in honesty, but the pressure to perform painted a different picture. As he matured, he began to feel increasingly detached from the world his family had built. He noticed how different each family member became when the cameras stopped rolling. Though their on-screen smiles remained intact, off-camera tension simmered. Arguments were kept out of episodes, and choices were often made not for survival, but to fit a storyline. Despite his growing doubts, Bear stuck around. He hoped things would return to how they used to be, that the family's bond and love were still genuine. But deep down, he knew that staying silent was slowly eroding his sense of self. Bear wasn't just a character on a reality show. He was a real person growing up in front of millions, all while keeping painful truths to himself. For years, he equated loyalty with silence and love with preserving the family's image. Yet every new episode, praised for its authenticity, left him feeling more disconnected. He began to wonder how long he could keep pretending, how fans would react if they knew what really went on. As time went on, Bear grew increasingly uneasy. He wanted to speak out, to free himself from the burden he carried. But fear held him back, fear of causing pain to those he still loved. He kept telling himself it wasn't the right time. Still, the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how long it's buried. Behind the scenes, Bear was holding back feelings he couldn't yet express. His upbringing wasn't just shaped by life in the Alaskan wild, it was molded by constant exposure to the cameras. While viewers saw him and his family battling nature, Bear was learning how to adapt to life under the spotlight. As one of 7 children, he grew up in what appeared to be the perfect survival family. Billy, the father, was the leader. Ami, the mother, was the quiet strength. Each sibling had their own persona, and Bear's was clearly defined. He was the wild, free-spirited one. In the beginning, Bear embraced that role. He enjoyed entertaining people and showcasing his high energy. He admired the world his parents had built and took pride in it. But as he got older, he began to realize that the version of himself seen on TV was incomplete. It was edited to fit the narrative of the show. Behind the scenes, producers would nudge certain behaviors, stage interactions, and shape emotions to fit audience expectations. That's when the pressure truly began to mount, not just from the public, but from within his own family. Everyone was expected to stay in character. Even when personal struggles arose, they were told to keep smiling and move the story forward. Bear didn't want to create conflict, but he felt increasingly confined. If he got too serious, people questioned what was wrong. If he asked uncomfortable questions, he was told to drop it. There wasn't room for the real Bear, only the version that fans had come to know. With time, it became clear that the show was shaping their lives more than their lives were shaping the show. Off camera, things felt different. Relationships were strained, communication dwindled, and as their fame grew, the closeness they once had seemed to fade. Emotionally, Bear began to withdraw. He attempted to open up a few times, but was always met with the same response: stay upbeat, don't cause problems, and remember the image you're representing. No one said it harshly, but the message was clear. Bear started keeping his feelings to himself, redirecting his focus to personal projects and quiet reflection. At times, Bear shared subtle things online, small clues that hinted life wasn't as perfect as it appeared. Yet, he never revealed too much. He simply wasn't ready. Even in his private life, especially in his complicated and very public relationship with Raven, he wrestled with trying to live the life he wanted while maintaining the role others expected of him. The pressure to maintain a certain image grew, and soon it became unclear who he was supposed to be. With every part of his life orbiting around a curated persona, Bear tried to keep things from falling apart. Deep down, though, he knew he wasn't living the life people thought he was. Bear held on for years, faithful to the image, to his family, and to the hope that things might eventually improve. But inside, something began to fracture. It wasn't a single catastrophic moment that drove him to the edge. Instead, it was a series of small incidents, arguments left unresolved, personal battles ignored, the relentless demand to keep going even when he was unraveling inside. Despite not feeling like himself, Bear was expected to be that same bold, loud, adventurous figure. The cameras demanded it, even when his heart didn't. Behind the scenes, the Brown family was facing mounting difficulties. Health issues, financial strain, and emotional turmoil followed them, especially after relocating from Alaska to Washington. The land was unfamiliar, routines had shifted, and while the family grew weary, the show pressed on. Bear smiled for the public, but behind that smile, he carried far more than anyone realized. He watched his siblings cope in their own ways, some distanced themselves, others kept silent, while a few just tried to get through each day. For Bear, though, staying silent became more and more difficult. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He simply wanted to tell the truth about the reality behind the series, about how painful it was growing up in the spotlight, and about the things he'd witnessed in his own family that didn't sit well with him. The death of his father, Billy, struck him deeply, more than most could understand. Billy had been the center of everything, the family, the show, the path they all followed. But when Billy passed, Bear wasn't just grieving the loss of a parent, he also inherited the weight of everything left unsaid and unresolved. In the silence that followed, things became louder than ever. While some relatives focused on preserving the legacy, others drifted away. Bear, however, felt an unshakable need to act. His ongoing relationship with Raven only intensified things. Their romance played out in front of millions, marked by breakups, reconciliations, and public scrutiny. Support poured in, but so did criticism. Bear tried to remain resilient, but inwardly, something had shifted. He was no longer that naive kid from the wilderness. He couldn't continue living quietly just to protect the family's public image. As he reflected on everything, the edited moments, the pain hidden behind scenes, and the blurry line between truth and performance, Bear found himself questioning what was real anymore. Eventually, he reached a breaking point. He was done pretending. Done holding on to secrets that weren't his to bear alone. Long before he publicly spoke out, signs had started to emerge. Fans noticed inconsistencies, episodes that didn't line up with reality, family members disappearing and returning without explanation. The Browns had always played by their own rules, but now it seemed like they were concealing something. Bear began to change. The wild, high-energy persona faded, replaced by someone more reserved. His social media reflected this shift. One day he'd share joyful moments in nature, the next, cryptic posts about loyalty, trust, or feeling misunderstood. While some chalked it up to a rough patch, others began to question what was really happening. Though he never provided clear answers, Bear left behind breadcrumbs, photos with captions about feeling alone in a crowd, posts about truth over appearances, and moments on the show where it seemed like he was holding back. These weren't dramatic outbursts. They were quiet, intentional signs. Those close to the family noticed a shift too. Former crew members spoke about how the production had changed in recent years. While the show had always danced between real and scripted, something had clearly altered. There were whispers of power struggles, arguments over what could or couldn't be shown. No one said anything publicly, but Bear seemed to carry the heaviest burden. Even during milestone moments, his wedding, the birth of his child, and his brief separation from Raven, Bear remained guarded. He shared just enough to stay visible but never fully opened up. It felt as though he was waiting. Then, when the moment finally came, it was quiet and raw, not a press event or media spectacle. It was a simple video. No fancy editing, no dramatic effects. Just Bear, sitting alone at a table in a dimly lit room, visibly tense and holding a wrinkled piece of paper. Finally, "I can speak," he began. "And I don't care what happens after this." He unfolded the page and laid it in front of him. On it was a personal timeline, marked by dates, initials, and a brief list of events that had haunted him for years. These weren't about contracts or money. They were moments, instances when, as he put it, the family chose the brand over the blood. What Bear revealed wasn't just network manipulation, it was something much more personal. He spoke of decisions made within the family, choices meant to protect their public image even if it meant burying real pain, silencing those who disagreed, and letting loved ones suffer in silence for the sake of the show. "The truth is," Bear said, tapping the paper, "we didn't just fake parts of the show. We faked parts of ourselves. And worse, when one of us started to break, when I started to break, they covered it up." He described how, during one of the darkest periods of his life, he pleaded to take a break from filming. He was struggling mentally and asked for time. But both production and family urged him to keep going, for the sake of the cameras. Bear was told that stepping away would be seen as abandoning the family. What he experienced as a personal breakdown was reframed into a storyline that painted him as wild, unstable, or simply as being Bear again. But he wasn't alone. According to him, other family members also showed signs of emotional exhaustion, yet they were pressured, not only by the show's producers but also by their own relatives, to keep going. "My family chose silence," Bear said. "If someone was hurting, it was easier to stay quiet than confront the pain. They thought ignoring it would keep things clean, but it only made things worse." As the video progressed, Bear became more composed. He didn't insult anyone or act out. Instead, he spoke calmly about what it felt like to belong to a family that prioritized on-screen unity, even if it meant sacrificing honesty off-camera. He made it clear that it wasn't about hatred, but fear. "They were afraid of losing everything we built," he explained, "but that fear made us lose something more important, each other." At the most intimate part of the video, the tone shifted. A voice was heard off-camera, Rain Brown's. "You said you wouldn't talk about that," she shouted. Seconds later, she appeared in the frame, visibly upset. "You promised, Bear." Unshaken, Bear responded, "I said I wouldn't if they told the truth themselves, but they didn't." Rain's voice trembled. "You're going to turn everyone against us." "I'm not," Bear replied. "I'm just done protecting the lie." Then Noah Brown stepped in, gently guiding Rain by the arm. "Let him finish," he said. "He needs to say it." The video ended shortly after. Bear looked into the camera one final time and said, "I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I still love them. But I can't pretend anymore, not when it's costing me this much." Within hours, the video went viral. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about what Alaskan Bush People showed, it was about what the show deliberately left out. And with Bear finally breaking his silence, it raised questions about what the family had hoped would remain hidden. When the camera stopped recording, Bear reportedly said little. Those close to him shared that his confession didn't bring instant relief. Years of unspoken tension couldn't be undone in a single moment. What lingered was not regret, but uncertainty about what would come next for the family. The damage wasn't limited to public image, it went deeper, touching trust that had already been fragile for years. That trust, eroded by silence, had now been torn by honesty. Yet in Bear's eyes, the silence had already caused more damage than truth ever could. If healing was to begin, it had to start with truth, even if it was painful. His family hadn't just maintained a myth, they had adapted to life inside one. Now, Bear had made the choice to live outside of that illusion, even if it meant doing so alone. So, what now? Bear's video marked a turning point, not only for himself but for the entire Brown family. The floodgates had opened, and the public was eager for more. Some reactions were predictable, while others were unexpected. Bear's loyal fans praised his bravery for finally speaking up. Many had long sensed that something about the show didn't feel right, and his words validated their suspicions. Comments poured in, filled with gratitude and support for his decision to break away from the show's controlled narrative. But not everyone responded positively. Some viewers felt betrayed. The Brown family had served as a symbol of inspiration to many, and the revelation that their reality differed from what was shown on TV was unsettling. For critics, it felt like they had been misled. Bear knew this was inevitable. Truth isn't always comfortable. The Brown family chose not to respond publicly right away, but the strain among them was clear. Conversations were happening, many of them. Some of Bear's siblings, long living under the weight of the family's public image, quietly acknowledged the truth in what he said. Others were torn, while they recognized the reality behind Bear's words. Airing the family's personal issues remained a painful prospect. Raven, Bear's wife, voiced her pride in his courage to speak out, though she also admitted it hadn't been easy. The couple had already endured their share of challenges, and the scrutiny only added pressure. Still, she stood by him as he navigated the fallout. The show's future became uncertain. For Bear, the real shift came after Billy's passing. He no longer wanted to be defined by his role on television. He craved something more meaningful, something authentic. He began dedicating himself to his personal life, focusing on his relationship with Raven, their children, and the quiet joys that came away from the spotlight. Bear understood that his decision had consequences. He risked his relationship with the show and perhaps even the family's brand. But it was a risk he was willing to take. His mental health, peace of mind, and freedom meant more than any fame could offer. For the first time in years, Bear felt like he was in control of his story. As the Browns continued to grapple with their new reality, Bear found a renewed sense of purpose, not only for himself, but for the people who had supported him from the beginning, and for those still trying to understand his decision to speak up. Ultimately, Bear's true journey was just beginning. So, who is your favorite Brown family member? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Until next time.